Today we have Shawn Berman and Harry Van Buren joining us. Both are associate professors of management in the Anderson School of Management at the University of New Mexico, and both teach business and society and business ethics. Shawn, how do you find examples and integrate them into a class? In other words, how do you find current examples that bring business and society or business ethics course alive?
So to me, I don't look for a specific current event. I mean, sometimes you look for a specific current event that's going to work with a specific topic. But I think one of the great things about teaching business and society is that there are so many current events going on that are going to relate to the various topics that you're covering on the course. So for instance, with the Occupy Wall Street movement, you can talk about does Occupy Wall Street actually constitute a stakeholder to the financial institutions? That would be one way to think about it. Another way to talk about it would be in the discussion of ethics and ethical frameworks. What sort of ethical missteps happened at financial institutions that might have led to what we now see culminating in Occupy Wall Street? So another way, to get at the sort of stakeholder framework as well is to think about what various stakeholder roles might the people in Occupy Wall Street have played. Certainly they're consumers of financial institutions, but you think about the relationship of Occupy Wall Street to the media. How do various stakeholder groups work in concert around a given issue? Or how do, with this relationship, I would think about how do stakeholders lacking power try to align themselves with other stakeholders to get them to take up their issues. So, I think when you have certain issues, there are a broad variety of topics where you can use the same issue in a different context. And actually, I think, that's one good way to sort of take an example, find a good example that's going to fit a lot of topics, and just keep coming back to that example, whatever the topic is. Okay, we talked about Occupy Wall Street in the ethical context. Now let's think about, from a stakeholder framework, what the relationship of Occupy Wall Street to financial institutions is, right? And then when you get into the political arena, how could Occupy Wall Street affect change in the political arena, right? So you can use the same example throughout the course if you find a robust enough example. And that lends some continuity to the course as well, and the students' minds, connecting it to current events.
Well, Harry, how do you prioritize the type of examples you bring into the classroom, or do they just pop up automatically in terms of just what's in the newspaper in a particular day? How do you find your various sources for examples in the classroom?
I think it's more the latter, where it tends to be the biggest issue at the time. And there's a couple of comments I would make there. The first is that there's a broad critique of business students that they are not aware of current events. And so one of the things I try to do in my teaching is to use current events from current business periodicals and other trustworthy news sources to expose students to what's going on at that given moment. So in addition to trying to accomplish that task, generally speaking, a lot of the events that are the #1 lead on the news are also going to be germane to business and society topics. And what I often do is I will pair a humorous clip with a serious clip and then some sort of news story. So the Occupy Wall Street movement has been well covered by, say, The Daily Show. And so I'm infamous in my classes for showing Daily Show and Colbert Report clips that illustrate some of the big topics related to business ethics and corporate social responsibility. Both of those programs also have a searchable backlist, so you can put in a topic, let's say you're teaching environmental responsibility. In 2004, The Daily Show did a clip on the Otero Mesa and oil drilling out there that nicely illustrates some of the key issues related to environmental responsibility versus economic development. If you then pair that with more serious news analyses through sources like National Public Radio, if you're doing environmental issues, sources like Living on Earth, or you could look at the BBC's programming, the idea is twofold. One is to expose students to current news events, but the second is to have them understand that it's not just what's going on in the business news. there's a broader cultural context that affects the stakeholder environment. And what Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert tell jokes about says something I think very significant about the broader culture facing business. And I think well-informed and well-formed business students understand not only the news, but the broader cultural context.
Shawn, could you tell us more about how you go about finding examples for your classes?
There's always a concern that, or at least I had a concern when I started doing this, that I was going to run out of current events to talk about. And sadly, corporate America keeps giving me plenty of examples. So, I don't worry so much about what current events am I going to use. I just have faith that stuff is going to happen during the semester that I'm going to bring into the classroom that's going to relate to whatever topics I'm going to talk about. In addition to the sources Harry mentioned, I think also obviously the Wall Street Journal is going to be a good place to go to find stories on in the latest issues in business. I also read a periodical called The Sun, which is actually a unique publication in that it doesn't do any advertising at all. But it's also it's often got some really interesting articles related to environmental issues and things like that I've actually found pretty useful in class. I'm trying to think. Obviously, the big ones are going to be Fortune, Business Week. Anything you can do, I think, to bring in The Economist, of course. Bring in these kind of periodicals that have name recognition with the students to show, you just need to be reading this in a slightly different context.
Absolutely.
And you see a whole bunch of questions that might not have been there when you read the article.
And to add a little bit to that, another great source of humorous clips is The Onion. I often show those clips.
Yeah.
But for more serious sources, the Financial Times does podcasts very similar to this one. And so if you go to the www.ft.com, there will be a video section, and it will be reporters talking about the current issues of the day in a setup that's similar to what we're doing here. I often find that those are incredibly useful, particularly in terms of giving students an international perspective. And then don't be afraid to use non-business sources. The New Yorker, for example, does really, really good coverage of economic issues, and particularly with MBA students, I won't be afraid to give them a longish article from the New Yorker and use that to illustrate something we're talking about.
As a final question for both of you, if it was 10 minutes before class and you had to go to one source to find some good business ethics, business and society examples, what would that one source be if you had very limited time?
So the first place I would go if I only had 10 minutes, I would look at what Morning Edition did that day. I would just go to the Morning Edition website. They've got the individual stories, so you can click on a certain story, and there's always going to be business news. And usually they're going to delve into some ethical component of that business news. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at what Morning Edition is talking about. And that would be it is my first go-to source when I've only got 10 minutes, because I have had that experience, and I'm just going to go to Morning Edition and see what they covered.
Okay. I would agree with that, absolutely. I mean, NPR, whether it's Morning Edition or All Things Considered the previous afternoon, or even if it's night class, you can do All Things Considered for that afternoon, is a great source. And if you then go to the Daily Show's searchable website, you can often find clips that are paired on a big news item. And then if I had 10 minutes ago, I would show both of those clips.
I want to thank Shawn and Harry for joining us today. And I know I personally have learned a lot about places to go to find good examples for teaching these classes. So thanks.